Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Hot Pursuit.
We have an incredible guest today.
Honestly, one of my favorite people in the industry to talk to.
Yeah,
He's a breath of fresh air.
Absolutely say the same thing. And
Yes.
What a career he's had as well.
Unbelievable.
I mean, he bought a Mustang when he was like 16, drove it across country. His grandfather worked at Ford. He went for to really build his chops at Lexus. And then, I'm not sure if it was Bill or Alan Mullally who brought him over, but now is the CEO of that company. So you knew who we're talking about.
Jim Farley.
Jim Farley.
And I also have to say he's Chris Farley's cousin.
That is also true.
I just love that.
And he's a real racer. He has his own podcast, which I've been listening to for about a year now. This is like the 2.0 version of his podcast. And I learned so much about him there, but I knew he raced because I'd seen him testing out cars in Dearborn, and he talks about it as well.
I think he's a great driver, and he actually is a pretty humble guy, but he's a genius.
All right, we've said too many good things about Jim Farley.
Yeah.
Let's get into the interview without any further ado. Let's kick it off with GTD, because you guys have been doing so much with that. I mean, obviously you're pumped, and I see they've started selling them in France. I love the suspension window in the back. Tell me about that car.
We just showed another version, the production vehicle, in France, and we went to the ring about a month ago just to see where we stand in terms of the vehicle's performance relative to the GT3 RS. We're pretty much in the final throes of the engineering. We start production late this year, early next year, depending on how there's so many unique parts that, it's hard to predict exactly when you're ready to go to mass production. We have the transaxle, and the suspension system is very new, as you said, and we've never put that in a production vehicle. No one has really. So there's still some final development to be done on the chassis, but the team's working through that, and we're heading to production here in a matter of months.
Are you taking orders yet?
We have applications. Pretty much the car's sold out now, based on the applications. We haven't told everyone exactly the final option pricing. We have some special versions that no one's seen before. And so, that will ultimately kind of shake out with the orders, but we won't sell it until and get the money, so to speak, until we're kind of in production.
Are you going to be racing it? I mean, I know from listening to your podcast that you're a big fan of racing, and you do a lot of racing yourself.
Sure.
I remember you testing out a Lola, I think, when I was with you in Detroit a few years back. Mm-hmm. Are you going to be racing this car yourself?
Last weekend at Mid-Ohio, we had our first Mustang Challenge with 27 cars, and I raced a Talingua-themed Dark Horse R there. And I think the Dark Horse R and the GT4 are kind of the right products for me. If I race the GTD or GT3, depending on the class, whether it's in WEC or SRO or IMSA, I think it's pretty expensive, and you really need to be doing practice and testing pretty much all year round. I don't have the luxury of that, and at 62, I just don't think it's a good fit for me to be racing all over the world with my job. It just doesn't fit. But the GT4, just to explain a little bit, we set up for the first time in Ford's history, at least, a kind of pyramid of racing. We put about 10,000 people through our experience schools around the country. And then they can graduate to a track car, a Raptor track, a Dark Horse track car. And then we have the Dark Horse R that we're racing now in our same make series, like Mazda Cup and Porsche Cup. And then we have the GT4 beyond that, which is a automatic gearbox or a sequential gearbox, and it's pretty different than the Dark Horse R. The Dark Horse R is a manual shift vehicle. And then we have the GT3 / GTD, depending on the GTE Pro, depending on the and all of that is within the Mustang. At the top of the pyramid, we also have Aussie supercars, and we race Mustang Cobra R in NHRA, and of course we have NASCAR and lots of other series. But So we want to give people the opportunity to kind of move up in that that triangle, that pyramid, wherever they want. And the big thing is that we're selling the vehicles. So we're no longer racing as a factory company. We're creating the dark horse Rs and the GT4s and GT3s for other teams. Like this, as we speak, the Proton team is in Le Mans racing.
Are you going to Le Mans
GD.
this weekend, Jim?
Bill's covering it. I'm going up to Northern Michigan dirt biking with my daughters.
Oh, that's wow.
My two daughters. So, and I promised him I'd do that. And so Bill and I try to cover marquee races like that. But this will be the first time that Mustang's at Le Mans in the GT class. So it's pretty exciting. I think we qualified third, but qualifying doesn't matter much in Le Mans. I raced last year my GT40 at Le Mans Classic, and a year before I finished second with my GT40.
Nice.
So I've raced at Le Mans several times in the vintage stuff, but I'm really focused on GT4 and Dark Horse R. And that's a little intimidating because we build the race cars for other people, not Ford, and sell them. And, it's probably not a good idea to race a lot with my customers.
You don't want to beat them.
Or like at Mid-Ohio, we had a few little dents and dings.
Rubbing his race.
Well, yeah,
car.
that's normal. That's expected.
But Jim, you guys are doing a lot more of supplying cars to race teams? Because you're also in the Bronco, you had the DR, which I'm so fascinated
we never
by.
did this before.
Yeah.
We never did anything before. We always raced ourselves. This is the first time we really, I think I explained about a year ago, we changed our strategy, and this is all new for us. And we started on the off-road side. There's no Porsche of off-road, so we really believe that Ford with Raptor and Bronco, we can be a global brand for off-road performance. And on the on-road, we want to use Mustang and that pyramid to kind of, make racing sustainable and a business tied to these derivatives like GTD at the top of Mustang and build out the Mustang brand. On the off-road side, that's really the biggest impact on our business. Raptor is like 10% of our global it's a very profitable vehicle. We now have Tremor below it. We have Raptor on Bronco, Ranger, and F-150 now. We also have Raptor R, so we're starting to develop different derivatives of Raptor, and that's just the beginning. And we also have the off-road rodeo and a Raptor experience that you can buy when you buy your Raptor. You just go to the school, and then we'll have a similar pyramid for off-road. Probably the middle part won't be racing, and maybe more social activities and more club stuff like BMW GS, more experiences. But both off-road and on-road, we're following the same formula.
Jim, you mentioned manual, and I'm just so curious how vital you think a manual transmission still is at Ford and specifically in Mustang, especially in light of, with the 911 hybrid not having a manual option. What is Ford's philosophy on the manual transmission?
Our belief is that each car company has its own unique DNA, and ours is a V8 manual and a coupe. And part of the reasons why we did the Mach-E is because we could stay in that category and offer a V8 and offer a manual. I don't think Porsche should have all the fun. And I think, they're kind of the establishment now, and we could be the disruptor. And so we're trying to learn as much as we can. I've always admired Mazda and Porsche, and I think that Ford can do the same thing and kind of, we globalized the Mustang a couple years ago, and some of our biggest dealers are in Australia and Sweden, not in the U.S.
Interesting.
Mustang is now the best-selling sports coupe in the world. We don't really talk about it.
Well, we talk about it.
Yeah, we talk about it, and I think Matt needs like a Mustang Raptor. Can we combine the two things?
Well, I have to say, I was in a Lamborghini Huracan Storado a couple weeks ago, and it was so much fun, and not just for off-road, but for commuting in New York. It'd be great to have a Mustang that was just a little bit lifted with off-road tires and a stick.
Do you think it would sell?
I don't know.
Yes.
I mean, I would.
Oh, yes.
People like me would buy one, but do you think it wouldn't sell?
What would you call it?
Well, there's been at least an internet buzz for a Mustang Raptor for a long time, a Raptor version of the Mustang. I don't know
Yeah.
what I would call it.
I would just call it the Mustang Raptor.
With the Bronco, you just
Yeah.
called it the Raptor, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. So, this, anyways, I'm not going to make any future announcements on products at the show, but the triangles will overlap.
Yep.
That's not a no.
Yeah.
That's not a no.
That's not a no.
You're saying
That's
there's
not
a
no,
chance.
and not a no and not a yes. That's why I was asking about the name.
Well, yeah, I liked there for a while. There was a warthog name floating around, which I thought was such a cool idea
very cool.
for the Bronco. In the Bronco, you can get a manual. At least you could. A buddy of mine bought one in Colorado with the 2.3.
Yep.
Is there ever going to be the chance of a bigger motor with a manual transmission or with a Bronco, or is that just you didn't think the take rate was going to be high enough?
It's not so much the take rate. I mean, we're not doing it on Mustang for the take rate or the sales. It's more for the people who really love it or really passionate about that experience, like I am, like Bill is. We like shifting our car. I love the GT3 Touring. I thought it was a really good move by Porsche, and we really like. So we're really looking at it more as an image thing and as an experience thing, that the company gets it more than we could sell or not. On a Bronco, we were really committed to an affordable Bronco and doing a two-door. We didn't have to do a two-door. We would sell all the Broncos we had if we had a four-door, but we did a two-door, and we did a steel wheel Bronco, and we did a manual for that reason. The platform for Bronco is the Ranger platform, and it's very difficult for us to develop a high-power engine with the manual transmission. We have a long history, and there's a lot of great suppliers like Tremec on the manual side for Mustang, but there's not as many. There's really no suppliers, so we have to do it ourselves, and that requires a lot of engineering. Right now, for Bronco, we're building out our derivatives, and we have more to come, which you'll see. And I think the priority is, more like a commercial vehicle or a high-end luxury Bronco, which a lot of customers are asking for. That's probably a higher priority for us from an image standpoint.
I will preface this next question by saying the Bronco was one of the first turbocharged V6s I drove where I was like, I like this. Mm-hmm. It really works, and the car
sense.
Feels light enough, and it's peppy, and I don't think you need more. However, when I'm in a V8, I love the sound, I love the warmth, I love the vibes, and you can do that with the Bronco as evidenced by the DR platform. Is there ever any chance that a V8 could go in a Bronco?
It could, but I don't think that's going to be our priority. When we developed the Bronco in the early 60s, it was approved in 62 at the same meeting as the Mustang was approved, and it was the same Mustang. It was the same horse. One was a Bronco and one was a Mustang, but the designer designed the same horse doing two different things. And the whole concept of the Bronco, I have the approval paper. Lee Iacocca approved it in my office right now, just 20 feet from here. And the Bronco was an off-road Mustang. That was the concept of the vehicle. So it does make sense to, kind of mix and match a little bit. But, that's really not our priority right now in Bronco. We really want to, I think things are changing a lot for the auto industry. The best-selling vehicle in the U.S. for 40 years has been the F-Series. Mm-hmm. We have an electric Mustang. We have an electric F-150. Hybrid is 25% of all F-150 sales now. The most popular combustion engine is a twin-turbo V6, not a V8. Things are changing.
That's
and,
fascinating. The hybrid thing alone.
I would say that maybe because you don't offer the big V8. Like my Raptor has a 6.2 liter V8, and it never gets old or disappointing. But you can't get it anymore.
I guess what maybe you'll get in between the lines here, I'll be explicit about it, is we're just kind of an irreverent company in a way, and we want to do things that surprise people. And I think a V8 Bronco wouldn't surprise a lot of people, and I think and I think a manual V8 will continue to surprise people on the Mustang, even though it's kind of conventional. I mean, if we were to do a super high-end Raptor, should we do it on Ranger or should we do it on F-150? There's an argument to be made there. We are the leader in the off-road performance space in pickups. We're the number one producer of pickups in the world, not just in the U.S. Ranger is now number 2 to Toyota. When I came, the company was 14th. Ranger is really like 20%. It's our second highest volume vehicle in the company is Ranger. We build it in 5 plants around the world, and it is Ford in Australia and South Africa and South America, and we're number one in pickups in Europe now, and we're just launching the Ranger in China, and one of the fastest segments in China is the pickup market. So, we have to think about the globe now because both Mustang and Raptor are global brands. We sell the Raptor, not even the Raptor R, the Raptor F-150 in China for $160,000. And we sell every one we make.
I mean, that's so interesting. And I watched the great package that our colleague David Weston did with you recently. And in that package, you did say that you've never seen a competition before like what you're seeing in China now.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about what Ford needs to do? I think you even called it the ultimate test for Ford for the next few decades. Can you just walk us through what exactly needs to happen at Ford to be competitive?
It's a great question. Thank you for asking it because it is the most, on the commercial side, it's the most important question to ask Ford. Look, the whole global industry is 90 million units. The installed capacity currently in China at an 8-hour shift is 53 million units. So 53% of all the global production for automobiles can be satisfied with all the plants in China working at 8-hour shifts. Their local market is 29 million. That means, yes, the capacity that they have to serve the rest of the world, I won't call it overcapacity because it isn't. They have enough capacity in China with just working 8-hour shifts, not building one more plant to satisfy the entire North America market. And all of us not to have to build one vehicle.
Wild.
So they are now 25% of the Mexico market, the Chinese. They're more than 70% of the Russian market, which most people don't watch anymore, but it's a big market. They are almost 20% of the Thai market, which is really critical for Southeast Asia because you can export from Thailand to Australia and New Zealand with no tariffs now. They're setting up their supply chain globally, including Mexico. There's like 300 Chinese auto suppliers in Mexico now. Mexico is such a large market for BYD and all the companies there that export that it's big enough that they can start to justify their own plant just for Mexico. And of course, with NAFTA, they can clearly import to the U.S. The Chinese EVs are a small part of what they export, but they're a big part of what they export to Europe. They're already 10% market share of all EVs sold in Europe. They have brands like MG that are among the top selling EVs in the UK. They obviously own Volvo brand and Polestar brand globally. So they're very successful outside of China. And their biggest advantage is the new supply chain that's emerging, that will compete against the Cherbourg and the Keiretsu and of course the North America/Western supply chain is very fit. They're building ground up, very efficient manufacturing plants for their supply chain. And they have very established rules in China about how Ford can compete with autonomous technology or data privacy. Our data can't leave China. And yet most of the countries in the world haven't really developed policies around data privacy and autonomy outside of China for the Chinese. Huawei and Xiaomi, their two biggest cell phone companies, have bet on automobiles, unlike Google and Apple. So when you drive the vehicles, they work great with your cell phone, especially if you own a Xiaomi or a Huawei phone. So the technology inside the vehicle has facial recognition, AI assistance in the vehicle. They have incredible mirroring with your phone. You can find in China small brands that are micro-targeted, like Li Auto, one of the fastest growing brands. They focus on EREVs, which is a new kind of EV, which we can go into. Li Auto focuses on Chinese large families. They have gravity seats, projector screens in the rear seat, and their focus is to use the car as a stationary space. So they want to make the interior so digital and so attractive that there's really the most attractive way to use a Li Auto car is stationary. And so, they're really competitive on costs. They're getting really good on micro-targeting. And for Ford to win, handed to your question, we have to be fully competitive on cost. And we have to have vehicle concepts that are very narrow, that are very specific to specific groups of people. And I think
What does that
the
look
first
like?
part, it looks like our future.
When you say narrow car concepts, does that mean very specific variants of Mustang, Raptor, all the things we've been talking about?
No, it really means vehicles that are more narrow than an Explorer. What I mean, not physically narrower,
Right.
but aimed at a
Niche.
much more specific client. Like, for example, today we're the number one 3-row crossover, unibody crossover in the U.S. with Explorer. But that's not narrow. That's a very broad audience. We sell them as police interceptors, and we sell them to suburban families and everywhere in between. And we have an ST version, and it's like a really broad product.
I get it.
What that means for us, if we were to be micro-targeted, is let's say we only go after suburban families with kids in high school or below who want to use the car for the parents as a relaxation pod and for the kids as a content machine.
That's specific.
So instead of like watching a movie in your home or your home theater, you go in your car in the parking lot, and that's the best movie experience you have.
Right. Or I always have been trying to find vehicles that fit rear-facing car seats because my
Yes.
wife insists on rear-facing car
The
seats.
struggle is real.
And
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, you didn't mention EVs in that, like when as a way to compete against.
But you
in
did
China.
mention e-revs, and I'd like to hear more about that because I think that's fascinating. For example, I'd spend a week in the Lightning. I have a Lightning tie on right now, by the way. Can you see this Lightning tie?
Worn in your honor. It's not Grateful
I like
Dead.
it. Love
It was awesome. As a family vehicle, it's great. As a truck, it's great. It's luxurious. It's a utility, and everything about it for me was perfect. And for a lot of people, that's a broad vehicle, but it's electric. So charging it, I mean, if you in the right situation, it's great. In the wrong situation, it's not. And I was thinking, man, if there was like a little range extender in the front, it would just change the game completely. Is that what an e-rev is?
Yes, exactly. So an e-rev is only really offered in China today. It's very popular among larger vehicles in China. Obviously, in China, they don't drive as long distance as all the three of us do, but they do go home for New Year's every year. So what an e-rev is, it's an all-electric vehicle, so it only drives in electric mode. Never is the combustion engine never drives the wheels, so it always feels like an EV. Good acceleration, very quiet, and you basically you have a battery system that powers the vehicle for about 120 to 150 miles. So some e-revs down to 80. And for 97% of your trips that three of us would take, you're all electric using the batteries. And then it has a gas tank and an industrial motor that just charges the batteries. And that is capable of propelling the vehicle in electric mode up to 700 miles. And so when you take a long trip, your body will probably maybe hold out for 300 miles before you have to stop. The combustion engine in China is used maybe once or twice a year. So they fill up once or twice a year. They use it as an electric vehicle, and they don't have to worry about charging on the road when they take their long trip. And, that's a very interesting, it's the fastest growing electric vehicle segment in China. It's growing faster than the pure electric vehicles. Like the Lightning or the Mach-E. And I think we're going to see a lot. I mean, our hybrid business in the U.S. is up 50% this year at Ford. Our EV business is up 90%. But, that e-rev, we're just going to see a lot more options in the middle where people's duty cycle, how they drive will be, the engineers will solve for those.
Does the rise of hybrids mean that pure electric vehicles are receding?
No. Yeah, thank you. No, I don't think so. I think, first of all, we should be very encouraged by the rise of the hybrid and more than anything, the rise in the hybrid pricing power. In the past, Ford's been offering hybrids for 25 years. When we did that, because it has duplicate powertrain, the customer never paid for both powertrains. Today they do. So in many of our hybrids, we make more money than the combustion alternative.
Interesting.
That's the first time that's ever happened in my 25 career of hybrids, 25 years of selling hybrids. And No, I think what we're going to see is just a lot of people don't have to do complicated math on a hybrid versus a pure EV. You don't have to do the resale calculation, the insurance calculation. You could just say, hey, here's how much fuel I save. Or in the Lightning, how much pro power, the F-150, how much pro power on board is worth for you as a generator. But I think you'll see hybrids diversify into high performance hybrids, into sports cars, like we're seeing with 911. That's just the beginning. There'll be many more. And then you're going to see more kind of electric experiences that aren't 325 miles because the batteries are so big.
Yeah. Is that still that's still the restrictive factor, really, with EVs?
Yeah.
The size and weight.
Yes. Yes. The larger vehicles require just enormous batteries that cost $30,000 to $50,000. Some are even more expensive. And an E-Rev has half the battery size because it only has to go 120,
are you going to build
150 miles.
Is the Ram Charger an E-Rev? And are you going to build E-Revs at Blue Oval City or?
I'm not going to go into that. All I'd say is, if you tow with an E-Rev, it doesn't work. As soon as you start towing, it's not a good solution because you need big batteries to tow. So the key thing is, anyways, I'm just explaining what's available in China, and it seems very interesting to us.
Are hybrids less politically charged in the U.S. than EVs? And do you see that changing after the election? Potentially.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen the latest data on Democrats and Republicans and how they look at hybrids versus pure EV versus ICE. I don't know the data, so I can't answer the question. But all I know is that our EV business is up 90% through June 11th. I checked the numbers before I came on with you guys through yesterday.
Noted and appreciated.
Hybrids up 51% for us, constrained by our production, and our combustion business is up 2% year over year.
Is the EV business driven in large part by Ford Pro? Because I've heard that Ford Pro just can't make enough.
It's true. When people think about electric, they don't really think about commercial. And the commercial electric journey for us, because we're 70% market share with e-Transit, and we're the leader in commercial in the U.S., has gone much faster than we thought. And the reason is because people have regular routes if they're commercial. Plumbers and electricians, that kind of tradesmen really drive the U.S. commercial market. And, it doesn't work for a Super Duty, someone towing. But a transit van customer is a really good fit for electric if they go back to the same place that they start every night and they have a repeatable route. And what they can install depot charging, and they don't need any charging on the road. And they don't also overbuy batteries, so they buy smaller battery solutions and smaller range because they know exactly their drive cycle. And so we've seen a lot more customers like Ecolab, some other customers go almost all electric now, and they had no intention a couple years ago. So it's interesting. No, we sell 10 to 15,000 on EV in the U.S. We've been number 2 for 2 years now to Tesla. People don't, I think, realize that.
That doesn't seem like a known fact.
No,
is that in the U.S.?
No. Yeah, we've been number 2 to Tesla as a manufacturer for 2 years. Number 3 is usually Hyundai, Kia combined. They're coming out with new vehicles like the EV9, and so they're coming out with more choice. And yeah, we're up 90% year over year. We had a kind of an interesting first quarter last year, so the comps are easy. But we're projecting to lose $5 billion on EVs this year. So the real issue is
not worrying you.
No, the opposite is the case. It's not. I don't really get worried. I get worried about our execution, but I don't get worried about the marketplace. The marketplace is the marketplace. It motivates us because we report it separately. It's very motivational for the whole Ford team to turn that $5 billion around. We're going to do it with the next generation of products, EVs, and improving the Gen 1 cost. We got out there in front of others. Witnessed by being number 2 for the last 2 years. Now some of our competitors are starting to scale their EV business, maybe beyond Ford, but we're already working and landing our second generation products while most of our competitors are kind of landing their first gen products. And that's why Doug Fields came from Apple to us and why Alan Clark from Tesla came to Ford. They've been working on those vehicles for a couple of years now.
And it does seem like you're saying it's very important for Ford to be competitive and even beat everyone else when it comes to price in the EV sector. And you've decided not to electrify the Lincoln line, right? Am I remembering that right? That seems like part of the strategy.
We've learned a couple things by being number two for a long time. We've learned two things. The first is there are really two classes of vehicles that lend themselves to electrification in the U.S. Work vehicles and small vehicles. Small vehicles travel less distance, and they tend to have other vehicles in the household that can take long trips. And we feel we really like our next cycle of products to be very focused on affordability. And we think that's also the right thing to do anyways. And that's why we set up a Skunk Works team in California to develop that product, that platform. We didn't really think that the core Ford team could really compete with BYD in a way. And so that team has been working for 2 years on that affordable platform. And then the work vehicles. And the work vehicles, we've learned a lot. We're also very popular with the e-Transit in Europe. Unlike some of our competitors, we're still in Europe. We're very profitable in Europe with our commercial vehicles. And so, that's really important for us. So the electric journey is very motivational. We don't like losing any money, but we also are inspired by the fact that the customers surprised us.
So usually Hannah reports on the luxury stuff, and I do all the finance stuff. And now she's going for the finance news scoops, and I want to talk about just cars.
This is why we're good.
Yes, so
we're yin and yang.
Jim, you're famous. You famously got a Mustang when you were a kid and drove out to California with it. I want to talk about your car guy inside you, not like a Chinese competition in the EV space. Like what
Take us to your garage.
What gets you pumped in your garage? Not like the new products you're making. Obviously, you've got the Dark Horse R is totally cool, and the Bronco. I mean, I desperately want one. But what about the older stuff, or what do you like to drive and collect?
It's changed over the years. I'm in my 60s now, and I really, I'm fortunate enough to flip maybe more than 100 cars, including race cars. So I've kind of owned pretty much everything I've ever wanted to. And I've kind of settled down to maybe in the golden part of my car person life, the cars I really love. I love my 73 Bronco because I work on it all winter.
So you like to wrench on it, basically.
Yeah, I do. I'm on the floor with my buddy Jim Kemp, and I'm. It's not uncommon for me to be in a boardroom and my nails to be filthy because I just can't clean them. And I have a '90 Celine Mustang, which I really like working on. We got a supercharger on that and all new suspension, but it's all bone stock and outside. I have a K Lincoln, a 1937 K Lincoln, a LeBaron coupe, which I really like. I'm starting to like the older cars more. I have a 1928 Bentley that I do a road trip with my son.
Wow.
We drove all the way through Colorado last year on my vacation. He's 17. He works at a dealership in London, and he's a car person. He's in high school, and very much like me, and he loves making fun of me.
What?
And so we try to take as many road trips as we can. We're going to take the Bentley from the Oregon border down to Monterey this year in July.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome.
That's an open top, I imagine? It's like a blower?
Oh, yeah. It's a Le Mans. It's not a blower, but it's a Le Mans 4.5 liter, totally exposed. And he's got to work the fuel pressure pump and the fans. And I'm working the distributor advance and the fuel mixture. And then we always have, things that happen. We're going to go with 5 or 6 other Bentley people. So that's what I like to do. I like cars that I drive. I have a GT40 and a Cobra that I race, but more than anything, I'm starting to like racing the modern stuff more. I really love cars that I get my hands dirty, that require that when you drive them, it's a full experience, shifting, braking. I like that whole emerging, just being immersed in a vehicle that you really don't have a lot of, and you could just enjoy even going slow.
Yes, I love that too.
What's
by
the
way.
main mechanical issue with the Bentley? I'm so curious. Like, what are you constantly vigilant against?
What a awesome question. Okay, so the Bentley was engineered with no gaskets. So
no.
it is like weeping oil all the time, like all the time.
Sounds
There's just
British.
oil coming out of every possible place, and so it's a constant kind of tightening, silicon journey of trying to eradicate the oil. The good thing is you got to replace the oil, so there's always clean oil in it because it loses some
naturally.
oil.
Okay, the other thing sorry, go ahead. Is there a list of things? There must be a list.
Yeah. Oh no, there's so many things on the Bentley. The Bentley has an accelerator in the middle of the 3 pedals.
Wow, that's
Seems
weird.
counterintuitive.
Sorry. The brake is in the middle, and so it's not a mechanical issue. It's just like every time I drive the Bentley, I got to remember the brakes. Not in the middle. The brake is on the far right where the accelerator is.
Oh yeah,
and
that's weird.
the accelerator's in the middle. The clutch is on the left, and so that's the biggest challenge that anyone has in driving an old Bentley. And we got so much to talk about still, like Formula One, but I want to get to the essence. Look, I'm fortunate enough to be a CEO. I'm like you guys. We're all part of the same car-loving people, but I don't let that kind of contaminate my thinking as a CEO.
That's fair.
That's harder. Yeah, that's harder than you think, actually. I don't want to be that person who makes poor decisions because I love cars. I actually put more pressure on a racing team to make good decisions on racing because I race, because I know how expensive it is, and I know how much you can waste racing. And I think on the same thing, if we're going to do a Mustang GT3 RS competitor, I'm not going to just be happy that it's good. It has to be better, or else we shouldn't even try.
Right. I also think it's fascinating. I mean, your job as CEO is something that we'll talk to you about on Bloomberg TV, but I really want to hear more about, I remember when you first told me about the Predator, the flat plane crank, and you were so pumped about the sound, the scream, and I've recently got to drive a Trinity, which was also awesome. So I was thinking to ask, what's your favorite Mustang powertrain? Not including the current one, because I know all CEOs will be like, the one we make now, please go buy it. But
the Coyote, yeah. This is going to sound totally unconventional, but when that 5-liter came out in the Fox body, it really was something. And I still love driving my 5-liter GT, my Celine. It's not super high technology anymore, but in the mid 80s, when we came out with the 5-liter, it was really something special. I have to say that 5-liter was enjoyed by millions of people around the globe. We put it in so many different cars. Yeah. People are still racing them, and NHRA or 25 hours of lemons. It's just a great powertrain. And I guess maybe I'll surprise you a little bit, Matt, with my answers. I just love that powertrain because it was a V8 that everyone could enjoy at affordable price, that had a manual, and I thought that was really cool.
No, it was awesome. When I was in high school and I was a freshman, the kid who was the senior who was the prom king, he had one.
You mean it wasn't you?
It was no.
I'm actually shocked.
This guy Brad, he had one.
God.
And
What's
we were
Brad
all,
up to now?
I don't know, but at that time he was the coolest in all of Granville, Ohio.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's actually very cool.
Yeah.
Jim, I can't let you go without asking you. You mentioned briefly Formula One, and it is really exciting that Ford's getting
so
back
exciting.
in.
Yes.
I'm curious to know why that was so important for Ford, and does this mean it's the start of something really big? Bigger than, I know obviously you're partnering to develop engines until 2030, but could we ultimately see a Ford racing team in F1?
And now this is a good example of being a racer, knowing what Formula One is and isn't, and knowing the background of the company. You know, we have no aspiration to own a team. We have no aspiration to build a Ford Formula One car.
Why not?
Because we believe the value in Formula One is the tech transfer. And the tech transfer that really matters is software telemetry, aero, and battery tech. In 26, Formula One will go to approximately 50% all electric. And they're also going to a low carbon fuel. So they have a great need for high discharge batteries, which we actually have a lot of experience with in NHRA electric racing. And we really are interested in low carbon fuel. Look at what Porsche's doing with their first fuel for their high-end 911s. They go to a green fuel. I'm very interested in whether we should do a synthetic green fuel for Mustang in the first fuel at the plant.
Wow.
Interesting.
And I want to learn more. We want to learn more about that low carbon synthetic fuel. We will at Formula One. Because all of our combustion engineers are having to design an engine for it. And we're working closely with Exxon to learn more about the fuel's characteristic. On the aero side, it turns out these very expensive batteries totally change the math on weight and aero. And so for these smaller vehicles, we have to have a radical approach to aero. And the best aerodynamicists in the world are in Formula One. And so we need to learn from them. Our aero is great, but we do not have the advanced understanding of aero that Formula One has. And the telemetry and the software for our commercial customers is getting more important. Imagine if you're a plumber, electrician, and I can go to you as a Ford customer, to a customer and say, you will never be off the road. We will predict failure of all components on your van, and we're going to use AI and sensors in the vehicle. And you will never be off the road. You just have to pay attention. When there's a warning, you have to do something. And Formula One is already developing those AI models and all the telemetry to do predictive failure of all components. They are way ahead of the rest of the world on predictive failure. So for our pro business, Formula One is really attractive on the software side. And that's the only reason why we went to Formula One. They need us on high discharge batteries. We need them on software, and high discharge batteries are fun to work on because maybe we'll have a partially electric, really high performance vehicle. And if we have the best high discharge battery, maybe the Ford works better than Porsche or anyone else. And the software is super important for pro. But we have no interest in owning a team. We've done that in the past. It really didn't work out. We're not good at running Formula One teams. We tried, we wound up, kind of leaving the sport with our tail between our legs. We don't want to do that again. It's a totally practical relationship.
But that's so amazing. When you think
so
about it,
refreshing to hear you
Jim
say
Farley
that.
says that they're going to Formula One to benefit the Ford Pro unit.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how cool that is.
It makes to hear you actually articulate it just like that makes total sense. And it's so refreshing just to hear you say, honestly, it's not for, this is our practicality, this is the use, and that's it. And we don't need anything more for our ego or anything. That's rare.
Well, we're going into the weekend happy.
Yeah,
Jim,
nice.
thank you so much for joining
Thank
us.
you.
So much,
Truly.
guys. I'm going to the plant. I'm going for a full inspection of one of our plants here in Michigan. I love you guys. Both of you are amazing.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Jim.
I'm so thankful that there are car people like you who are in the mass media kind of educating customers about this transition. It's going to be scary for a lot of customers, and you're there for them. And I've known both of you for a while, and I'm just so thankful to spend time with both of you.
Me too.
Jim, thank you so much.
That was Jim Farley. He was just as good as we expected.
Yeah, I have to say, David Weston did this great package with Jim that I just watched, and it's all about Detroit. But in the package, Jim made this comment that he's like, we're well into the messy middle of the most transformational time at Ford since the Model T. And after talking with him, I actually can see that. I mean, you can see where he's like, this is where we are. This is where we are headed. It's great.
I forgot. Now I'm kicking myself because I forgot to ask him about something Weston told me this morning. He said, there's only one sports car that's made in America. And he's
Oh.
talking about the Corvette. Because
Yeah.
David Weston has a
Yeah.
C1 Corvette.
Yeah.
And he always says this to me.
Yeah.
Because he thinks still of Mustang and Camaro, as muscle cars. But Mustang
I'm
is
sorry.
definitely a sports car now.
Of course.
Right?
No one in their right mind would argue that
I mean-
a Mustang isn't. It's a sports car.
Of course, even though it has 4 seats, and the same is obviously
does a
true of
911.
Camaro. You're very good point. I'm going to tell
on.
Weston that next
Yeah.
time. I was going to ask Jim, but I didn't want to.
No shame.
Exactly. So very good stuff from Jim Farley. We didn't expect any less. And what else have you got going on right now? What's happening in Hannah Elliott's world?
Well, it's great to be in the studio with you, Matt. That is my most favorite thing. I'm back in New York. It's the mothership. It makes me so happy to be here and see all of these faces that I know and love and be in this amazing space. I'm going to take a week off. I'm going to be in the city. I'm going to be around. If you see me, come say hello. I'm excited to be here.
Shoot Hannah an email, by the way.
Shoot us an email,
And
both
me.
of us. Hot
At-
Pursuit.
Hot Pursuit at Bloomberg.net.
That's it.
Now I know it by heart. At
Yes.
Hot Pursuit at Bloomberg.net. And are you driving anything fun? Have you been driving
What?
anything?
No, I did drive a couple Mercedes last week that I'll talk about later. I think they're under embargo. I'm going to go drive that hybrid 911 next week.
Oh,
so we'll
in
talk about-
Sevilla.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we'll talk about that. But no, this week it's pure foot traffic.
Nice. So the 911, we've talked about it, but I'm excited to get your take. Also, Sevilla, an amazing
That is
city.
kind of your homeland anyway.
I
Besides
adore it.
Germany.
And I would recommend going to Cordoba and also to Granada. I mean, what an amazing part of Spain. I have been driving. So I drove last week the Kia Sorento.
I remember that.
Awesome
You liked
vehicle.
it.
I really liked it. I'm just always blown away because when that brand came out, I was like, ugh, like Yugo, and now they continue to hit home runs. I love the EV9, as I talk about all the time, but the Sorento was actually fun to drive, and it's like a mid-size SUV.
I love that for you. Also, are you getting a Mustang soon? to
I
drive?
am.
Speaking of Mustang,
I am going to get a Mustang at the end of the week, I think, next
Okay.
week. Right now, I'm driving a BMW Z4.
Oh, fun.
I just started driving it, so I will tell you more about it next week. I got to say, it feels like heavy in the wrong places.
Uh-oh. Oh, no.
Also, the brakes are not confidence-inspiring.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And for someone over 6 feet tall as I am, it's a tight fit. But I'm just happy that it has a
Okay.
stick shift and the
Okay,
top
fine.
comes
Yeah,
down.
this is a
And I
dying
think it's
breed.
gorgeous also. But we'll see. I got to spend some more time driving
What
it to
color
see.
is it?
It's I think they call it frozen forest green or something like that.
Not the cartoon.
I love green, but it's a matte color, and I feel
Okay.
like car makers are all coming out. Ford is doing this too, like 10 years too late with the matte
Yeah.
colors, right? I would rather
Yeah.
just be the glossy, like metallic paint, but it's a beautiful car. I'll put it out on Instagram. I'll put it out on YouTube as well.
I can't wait to see it.
All right, well, that's all we got for you this week. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Remember to shoot us an email at hotpursuit@bloomberg.net. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Bloomberg.